When we gaze back through the corridors of time, our attention is often captured by the titans of antiquity, the Romans, the Greeks, the Egyptians. Their stories are writ large in the annals of history. Their monuments pierce the sky, their empires cast long shadows across the millennia. History, it seems, often remembers the loudest voices, the most conspicuous conquerors. But the grand tapestry of human civilization is woven from countless threads, many of which are subtle, almost invisible to a passing glance. These are the quieter civilizations, the peoples who lived and thrived in the spaces between the great powers, whose contributions were no less profound for being less heralded. This journey we're about to embark on is one of rediscovery. We'll peel back the layers of more familiar histories to uncover the stories of 10 obscure ancient peoples whose legacies persist in ways you might never have imagined. From the engineers of desert cities to the horse lords of the vast steppe, their ingenuity, their art, their philosophies have become part of our shared human DNA. They are the hidden architects, the forgotten merchants, the silent innovators whose influence echoes down to our present day, shaping the very world we inhabit. So, prepare to venture off the beaten path of history. Let's travel together across continents and through ages to meet the unsung cultures that helped build our modern world. We will navigate by the stars of their achievements and listen for the whispers of their existence in our own lives. The story of humanity is far richer and more complex than we often acknowledge, and its most fascinating chapters are sometimes the ones that have been, until now, left unread. Imagine ancient Italy, not yet dominated by the singular might of Rome. In the heart of Tuscany, a vibrant and sophisticated civilization flourished, one that would become the tutor to its more famous successor. These were the Etruscans. Long before Romulus and Remus were even a myth, the Etruscans were building bustling cities, creating exquisite art and practicing complex religious rituals. They were a people of refined tastes and profound spiritual beliefs, whose society was a beacon of culture in the pre-Roman Italian peninsula. Their origins are shrouded in mystery, a puzzle that has intrigued historians for centuries. Were they indigenous, or did they arrive from the east? What we know for certain is that the burgeoning city of Rome, situated on their southern border, was like a sponge, absorbing Etruscan culture, technology, and customs. Look at the very layout of a Roman city, the grid-like precision of its urban planning, the engineering of its sewers like the Cloaca Maxima. These were not Roman inventions, but innovations inherited from their Etruscan neighbors. The Romans learned from them how to build with arches, how to drain marshlands, and how to organize their cities for both function and grandeur. The foundation of Rome's architectural genius was laid by Etruscan hands. Their influence seeped into the very soul of Roman society. The iconic symbols we associate with Roman power, the fasces, a bundle of rods with an axe, which would later give us the word fascism, was an Etruscan emblem of authority. The religious life of Rome was also deeply colored by Etruscan practices. The art of divination, of reading the will of the gods in the flight of birds or the entrails of sacrificed animals, was perfected by Etruscan priests, the haruspices, whose expertise was sought by Romans for centuries. Even the gladiatorial combat that became a hallmark of Roman entertainment may have its roots in Etruscan funeral rites. The Etruscan language, a unique non-Indo-European tongue, has largely been lost to us, further obscuring their story. We piece together their world from the silent testament of their tombs. The necropolises at Seafarers and Tarquinia are cities of the dead, with underground chambers painted with vibrant frescoes depicting scenes of feasting, dancing, and music. These murals reveal a people who celebrated life with an intensity and joy that contrasts sharply with the austere image of their Roman successors. They show a society where women enjoyed a more prominent and equal status than in either Greece or Rome, participating openly in public life. Ultimately, the Etruscans were absorbed by the rising power they had helped to nurture. As Rome's legions marched across Italy, the Etruscan city-states fell one by one, their language and identity slowly fading into the Roman mainstream. Yet their legacy was not erased, it was assimilated. They became the invisible architects of Roman greatness, the silent partners in an empire that would come to dominate the known world. To understand Rome, we must first acknowledge the profound and enduring debt it owes to the mysterious and brilliant Etruscans. In the vast, arid heart of Central Asia, between the Amu Darya and Syr rivers, lay a region called Sogdiana. From this land emerged a people who, for over 1,000 years, were the undisputed masters of commerce, the essential connective tissue of the ancient world. They were the Sogdians. Unlike the great empires that built their power on armies and conquest, the Sogdians built theirs on caravans and contracts. They were not a unified empire, but a network of city-states, Samarkand, Bukhara, Panjakent, that became bustling hubs of international trade and cultural exchange. The Silk Road is a name that evokes images of Chinese silk and Roman gold, but it was the Sogdians who were the primary agents making this legendary network function. They were the middlemen, the translators, the diplomats, and the financiers. Their caravans, laden with goods from every corner of Eurasia, braved treacherous mountains and desolate deserts. They carried silk, spices, and paper from the east, and they brought glass, silver, and wool from the west. But they didn't just transport goods, they transported ideas, religions, and artistic styles. Their language became the lingua franca of the Silk Road. The Sogdians' success was built on a unique cultural adaptability. They were chameleons of faith and culture. A Sogdian merchant in China might embrace Buddhism, while his cousin in Persia might follow Zoroastrianism or Nestorian Christianity. This religious tolerance and cultural flexibility were not just philosophical ideals, they were pragmatic business strategies. It allowed them to build trust and forge connections with a diverse array of peoples, from the Tang dynasty in China to the Sasanian Empire in Persia and the Byzantine Empire further west. Their networks were built on family ties and diaspora communities established in oases and cities all along the trade routes. Archaeological discoveries have unveiled the richness of their civilization. Murals found in the ruins of Panjakent depict epic tales, scenes of lavish banquets, and merchants journeying to foreign lands. These artworks are a dazzling fusion of styles, blending Persian, Indian, and Chinese motifs, a visual testament to their cosmopolitan world. We also have the Sogdian ancient letters, discovered in a watchtower near Dunhuang, which offer an intimate glimpse into their lives. These letters, written by merchants and their families, speak of business deals, personal anxieties, and the challenges of life on the road, humanizing these legendary traders. The Sogdian Golden Age waned with the Arab conquest of the 8th century and the subsequent political shifts in Central Asia. The rise of maritime trade routes also diminished the primacy of the overland Silk Road. Gradually, their distinct language and identity were assimilated into the Turkic and Persian cultures that came to dominate the region. Yet, the work of the Sogdians was done. For centuries, they had been the world's great connectors, weaving a web of commerce and culture that brought the far-flung corners of the ancient world into a shared conversation. Their legacy is the very idea of a connected globe. Let us journey back in time to the Bronze Age, to the island of Crete in the shimmering Aegean Sea. Here, long before the glories of Athens and Sparta, Europe's first advanced civilization arose. They were the Minoans, named by archaeologist Arthur Evans after the mythical king Minos. They were not warriors in the traditional sense. Their power was not forged in conquest, but projected across the waves. They were a civilization of the sea, thalassocrats whose fleets connected them to Egypt, the Near East, and the Greek mainland, creating a vibrant network of trade and influence. The heart of Minoan civilization was its magnificent palaces, sprawling complexes that were far more than just royal residences. Places like Knossos, Phaistos, and Malea were administrative centers, religious sanctuaries, and vast storage depots all rolled into one. They were architectural marvels, featuring multiple stories, light wells, advanced plumbing and drainage systems, and vast courtyards. The absence of defensive walls around these early palaces speaks volumes. It suggests a society at peace, secure in its naval supremacy, a stark contrast to the fortified citadels of their Mycenaean successors on the mainland. What truly captivates us about the Minoans is their art. The frescoes that adorn the palace walls at Knossos are alive with color and movement. They depict a world of astonishing grace and vitality. We see leaping dolphins, elegant processions, and athletic figures, both male and female, engaged in the perilous sport of bull leaping. This art reveals a deep connection to the natural world and a society where women appear to have held a high and perhaps even priestly status. Their pottery, with its swirling, marine-inspired motifs, was prized throughout the Mediterranean. The Minoans also possessed a written language, a script we call Linear A. This is one of history's great unsolved mysteries. Despite our best efforts, we have not yet deciphered it. It stands as a silent testament to their complex administration and culture, its secrets locked away. What we can infer is that they managed a sophisticated redistribution economy, where agricultural surplus, olive oil, wine, grain, was collected at the palaces and then distributed back to the populace or traded abroad. This economic model sustained a large and prosperous population for centuries. Around 1450 BCE, this brilliant civilization met a sudden and violent end. The exact cause is still debated. Was it the cataclysmic eruption of the Thera volcano on nearby Santorini, a massive tsunami, a devastating earthquake, or an invasion by the more militaristic Mycenaeans from mainland Greece? Perhaps it was a combination of these factors. The palaces were destroyed and Minoan culture was eclipsed. But their legacy endured. They passed on their seafaring skills, their artistic traditions, and their myths, like that of the labyrinth and the Minotaur, to the nascent Greek world. They were the first spark, the civilization that taught Europe to dream of art, trade, and life beyond subsistence. Deep in the tropical lowlands of south-central Mexico, around 1600 BCE, something extraordinary happened. From the fertile, swampy earth, a culture arose that would become the mother civilization of Mesoamerica. These were the Olmecs. The name itself is a modern invention, meaning rubber people in the language of the Aztecs, who knew of them only as a mysterious, ancient people. The Olmecs laid the foundational elements that would define all subsequent Mesoamerican civilizations, from the Maya to the Aztecs. They were, in a very real sense, the ones who invented civilization in this part of the world. The most iconic and awe-inspiring legacy of the Olmecs are the colossal heads. 17 of these monumental stone portraits have been discovered, carved from massive boulders of volcanic basalt. The largest stands nearly 11 feet tall and weighs an estimated 40 tons. Quarried and transported from mountains over 100 miles away, without the use of wheeled vehicles or draft animals, their creation was a staggering feat of engineering and labor mobilization. Each face is unique, with distinct features and headgear, leading scholars to believe they are portraits of powerful Olmec rulers immortalized in stone. But, the Olmecs were more than just master sculptors. They were pioneers in countless fields. They were among the first in the Americas to construct monumental ceremonial centers, like those at San Lorenzo and La Venta, aligned with specific astronomical orientations. They likely developed the first writing system in the Americas, evidenced by the Cascachal block, a stone tablet bearing 62 distinct glyphs. They were early practitioners of the Mesoamerican ball game, a ritual sport of immense cultural significance. They even understood and used the concept of zero, long before many Old World cultures. Their influence radiated outward, creating a shared cultural sphere. Olmec-style artifacts, particularly their exquisite jade carvings and distinctive were-jaguar motifs, have been found far beyond their heartland. This suggests a vast trade network through which they exchanged prestige goods and, more importantly, ideas. They disseminated their cosmology, their ritual practices, and their political structures. The feathered serpent deity, so central to later cultures like the Aztec Quetzalcoatl and the Maya Kukulkan, likely has its origins in Olmec iconography. Around 400 BCE, the Olmec civilization declined, its great centers abandoned, and its people seemingly vanishing back into the tropical landscape. The reasons for this collapse are unclear. Environmental changes, volcanic eruptions, or internal social strife are all possibilities. But their spirit never truly died. It lived on in the civilizations that followed: the Maya calendar, the Aztec gods, the pyramids that would one day dot the landscape of Mexico and Central America. All of these can be traced back to the foundational innovations of the mysterious and powerful Olmecs. They were the cultural spring from which a continent's great civilizations would drink. Imagine for a moment a vast, unending sea of grass, stretching from the Black Sea to the borders of China. This was the Eurasian steppe, and for centuries it was the domain of a nomadic people who lived and died in the saddle. They were the Scythians, a confederation of fierce and mobile tribes who dominated this immense landscape from roughly the 9th to the 2nd century BCE. They built no cities, no permanent temples, no lasting monuments of stone. Their empire was one of movement, their wealth was on the hoof, and their story is written in the earth of their burial mounds. The Scythians were the quintessential horse lords. They were among the first to master equestrian warfare, a revolutionary development that gave them unparalleled military advantage. The Greek historian Herodotus described them in detail, painting a picture of formidable warriors who drank from the skulls of their enemies and were masters of the composite bow, capable of firing arrows with deadly accuracy from horseback. Their nomadic lifestyle, centered around vast herds of horses, cattle, and sheep, made them an elusive and unpredictable force, frustrating the armies of settled empires like Persia. But to see them only as savage warriors is to miss the other half of their story. The Scythians were also artisans of extraordinary skill and unique aesthetic vision. Excavations of their burial mounds, or kurgans, have unearthed a treasure trove of breathtaking artifacts. These tombs, frozen in the Siberian permafrost at sites like Prehistoric, have preserved organic materials in miraculous condition. We have found intricate felt tapestries, elaborate horse trappings, and even the tattooed skin of Scythian nobles. Their bodies were covered in elaborate designs of fantastical beasts, a practice that was clearly a significant part of their cultural identity. Their most famous artistic creations are works of gold. Scythian goldsmiths produced objects of stunning beauty and complexity, a style known as animal-style art. Gold plaques, combs, and vessels are decorated with dynamic, swirling figures of stags, griffins, panthers, and other real and mythical creatures, often locked in combat. This art wasn't merely decorative, it was imbued with spiritual meaning, reflecting their shamanistic beliefs and the fierce, untamed world they inhabited. It was a portable art for a people constantly on the move, a way to display wealth, status, and spiritual power. The Scythians were eventually displaced by other nomadic groups like the Sarmatians, and they gradually faded from the historical record, assimilating into other populations. They left no written history of their own, so we see them primarily through the eyes of outsiders like the Greeks, or through the silent testimony of their graves. Yet these graves tell a powerful story. They speak of a complex society that mastered its harsh environment, that combined martial prowess with artistic genius, and that created a vibrant culture of movement and freedom on the endless plains of the steppe. They were the tattooed horse lords, and their spirit thunders on in the art they left behind. In the rugged highlands of Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, a great power arose during the late Bronze Age. They were an empire of iron and chariots, a military force that could stand toe-to-toe with the mighty Egyptians. These were the Hittites. For centuries, they were little more than a name mentioned in the Old Testament. It was only through the rediscovery of their capital, Hattusa, and the decipherment of their cuneiform tablets in the early 20th century that the true scale of their power and sophistication was revealed. They were the third great superpower of the ancient Near East, alongside Egypt and Babylonia. The Hittites were pioneers of the Iron Age. While their contemporaries were still primarily using bronze, Hittite smiths had mastered the difficult art of forging iron. This gave them a significant military advantage, producing harder, more durable weapons and tools. Their true battlefield innovation, however, was the light, three-man chariot. While others used two-man chariots, a driver and an archer, the Hittite version added a third soldier with a spear, turning the chariot from a mobile missile platform into a shock weapon, a kind of Bronze Age armored cavalry capable of breaking enemy formations. This military prowess culminated in one of the most famous battles of antiquity, the Battle of Kadesh, fought around 1274 BCE. Here, the Hittite army under King Muwatalli II clashed with the Egyptian forces of the celebrated pharaoh Ramesses II. Both sides claimed victory in their own propaganda. Ramesses famously covered Egyptian temples with reliefs of his supposed triumph, but the reality was a bloody stalemate. It was a clash of titans that demonstrated that neither empire could decisively defeat the other. This military deadlock would lead to a revolutionary achievement. Realizing that endless war was mutually destructive, the Hittites and Egyptians chose a different path. Around 1259 BCE, the Hittite king Hattusili III and Ramesses II negotiated and signed a treaty. This document, known as the Treaty of Kadesh or the Eternal Treaty, is the oldest surviving international peace treaty in the world. Clay tablet copies were exchanged, and a silver version was displayed in the temples of both empires. It established a pact of non-aggression, a defensive alliance, and provisions for the extradition of political refugees. It was a landmark moment in the history of diplomacy. The Hittite Empire eventually collapsed around 1178 BCE during the widespread turmoil known as the Late Bronze Age collapse. Their great capital of Hattusa was burned and abandoned, and their empire fragmented. For thousands of years their memory faded into obscurity, but their legacy, etched into clay tablets, endures. The Hittites were more than just fearsome warriors. They were also pragmatists and innovators in the art of statecraft. In a world defined by conquest, they demonstrated that lasting security could also be found through diplomacy, mutual respect, and the radical invention of a negotiated peace. A replica of their treaty now hangs at the United Nations, a timeless reminder of their wisdom. Deep within the dramatic, red rock canyons of southern Jordan lies a city that seems carved from a dream. This is Petra, the breathtaking capital of an ingenious and honestly pretty elusive people, the Nabateans. Originally a nomadic Arab tribe from the Arabian Peninsula, the Nabateans settled in this remote desert landscape around the 4th century BCE. From this seemingly inhospitable location, they built a kingdom that became a major crossroads of commerce, controlling the lucrative trade routes that carried incense, myrrh, and spices from Arabia to the Mediterranean world. The genius of the Nabateans was their absolute mastery of water. In a hyper-arid environment where rain falls only a few times a year, they developed an astonishingly sophisticated system of hydrology. They were, without a doubt, desert engineers of the highest order. They carved intricate networks of channels, dams, cisterns and conduits directly into the sandstone cliffs. This system allowed them to capture and store every precious drop of flash flood rainwater, sustaining not only their population, but also lush gardens within their hidden city. They didn't just survive in the desert, they made it bloom. This control of water was the key to their wealth. By creating a secure and well-supplied oasis in the middle of the desert, Petra became an essential stopping point for trade caravans. The Nabateans grew rich by levying taxes and providing protection and services to the merchants who passed through their territory. They were skilled diplomats as much as they were engineers, navigating the complex politics between the great powers of the day, the Ptolemies of Egypt, the Seleucids of Syria, and later the Romans, to maintain their independence and prosperity for centuries. Their wealth and cultural exposure are immortalized in their architecture. The famous monuments of Petra, like Al-Kazne or the Treasury, and Ad-Dair, the monastery, are not built but carved directly out of the living rock. These magnificent tomb facades display a unique fusion of styles, blending their own native traditions with Hellenistic, Egyptian, and Mesopotamian influences. This eclectic architecture reflects their position at the heart of a global trade network, a cosmopolitan people who absorbed and reinterpreted the artistic ideas they encountered. The Nabatean kingdom was eventually annexed by the Roman Empire in 106 CE and became the province of Arabia Petraea. As sea trade routes grew in importance, the overland caravan routes declined and Petra's significance slowly faded. The city was gradually abandoned to the desert sands, its existence known only to the local Bedouin for over 1,000 years, until its rediscovery by a Swiss explorer in 1812. The Nabateans show us the extraordinary heights of ingenuity that can be reached when human creativity is pitted against the harshest of environments. They didn't just outsmart nature, they danced with it. When we think of prehistoric hunter-gatherers, we often imagine small nomadic bands constantly struggling for survival. Now, travel to ancient Japan as far back as 14,000 BCE and meet a people who shatter that stereotype. These were the Jomon people. For over 10,000 years, they thrived in a society of remarkable complexity and stability, all without practicing agriculture. Their name, Jomon, means cord-marked, a reference to the distinctive patterns on the pottery they created, some of the oldest pottery in the entire world. The invention of pottery was a revolutionary step. It allowed the Jomon to cook and store food more effectively, unlocking new nutritional sources and enabling a more settled lifestyle. Living in a land rich with resources, abundant forests for nuts and game, and coastlines teeming with fish and shellfish, the Jomon were able to establish long-term settlements. Some of their villages, like the Sanai Maruyama site, were occupied for over 1,000 years and featured large pit dwellings, raised storehouses, and even massive wooden structures that suggest a highly organized community. This was a level of sedentism rarely seen in a pre-agricultural society. Jomon pottery is more than just a technological milestone. It is a window into their spiritual and artistic world. Over the millennia, their ceramic style evolved dramatically, from simple, functional pots to incredibly ornate and flamboyant vessels from the Middle Jomon period. These flame-style pots, with their wild sculptural rims, seem to defy function and express a powerful creative energy. They were not just making containers, they were making art. This long, continuous ceramic tradition spanning thousands of years is unparalleled in the prehistoric world and speaks to a deep-seated cultural continuity. The Jomon also left behind enigmatic clay figurines known as dog. These stylized human and animal figures, often with exaggerated features and coffee bean eyes, are objects of intense speculation. Many are depicted as female, with prominent breasts and hips, suggesting they may have been fertility symbols. The fact that many dog are found deliberately broken has led some to believe they were used in healing rituals, with the ailment symbolically transferred to the figurine before it was destroyed. Whatever their exact purpose, they offer a tantalizing glimpse into the rich spiritual life of the Jomon people. Around 300 BCE, a new wave of migrants, the Yayoi people, arrived in Japan, bringing with them the cultivation of rice and advanced metalworking. This new agricultural way of life gradually displaced the Jomon hunter-gatherer culture. Yet the Jomon legacy was not entirely erased. Genetic and cultural studies suggest that the Jomon people were assimilated, contributing to the ancestry of the modern Japanese population. For over 10,000 years, they laid the deep, prehistoric cultural foundations upon which the nation of Japan would later be built, a testament to the enduring power of a people in harmony with their environment. Along a narrow strip of coastline in the Levant, in what is now modern Lebanon, a remarkable maritime civilization flourished. They were the Phoenicians. Hemmed in by mountains to the east, they turned their gaze westward to the vast expanse of the Mediterranean Sea. They were not empire builders in the military sense. Their domain was the water. In their sturdy cedarwood ships, they became the greatest traders and sailors of the ancient world, weaving the Mediterranean basin into a single economic and cultural zone. The Phoenicians established a network of trading posts and colonies that stretched from Cyprus to the coast of North Africa, to Sicily, Sardinia, and all the way to the Iberian Peninsula. Their most famous colony, Carthage, would itself grow into a mighty empire that would rival Rome. They were fearless explorers, said to have circumnavigated Africa 2,000 years before Vasco da Gama. They traded in Lebanese cedar, glass, textiles dyed with their famous Tyrian purple, a color so rare and expensive it became synonymous with royalty, and acted as middlemen for goods from across the known world. But the Phoenicians' most profound and enduring contribution was not a product they traded, but a tool they perfected. As merchants dealing with diverse peoples and languages, they needed a simple, efficient way to keep records. The complex cuneiform and hieroglyphic scripts of Mesopotamia and Egypt, with their hundreds of characters, were just too cumbersome. So they developed something revolutionary, a simple alphabet of just 22 consonants, where each symbol represented a single sound. It was an elegant, flexible, and incredibly easy-to-learn system. This Phoenician alphabet was a game-changer. It democratized literacy, taking writing out of the exclusive hands of highly trained scribes and making it accessible to the common merchant. As the Phoenicians sailed and traded, they spread their alphabet across the Mediterranean. The Greeks adopted it, adding vowels and adapting it to their own language. The Etruscans then learned it from the Greeks and, in turn, passed it on to the Romans. The Latin alphabet you are reading right now is a direct descendant of the system developed by those ancient Phoenician traders. The Phoenician city-states like Tyre, Sidon, and Byblos were eventually conquered by a succession of empires: the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Persians, and finally Alexander the Great. Their political independence was lost, and their distinct identity gradually faded. But their intellectual legacy is immortal. They didn't just teach humanity how to trade across vast distances. They taught humanity how to write in a way that would underpin communication, literature, and science for millennia to come. Every time we write a letter, read a book, or type a message, we are paying tribute to the genius of the Phoenicians. Our journey through forgotten histories now brings us to the northernmost islands of Japan, primarily Hokkaido, and the people who have called this rugged land home for centuries. They are the Ainu, the indigenous people of Japan. With a culture, language, and spiritual tradition distinct from the majority Yamato Japanese, their story is one of resilience in the face of immense pressure to assimilate. For a long time, they were the forgotten natives, a people whose existence was officially denied by the very nation built on their ancestral lands. The traditional Ainu way of life was deeply intertwined with the natural world. They were hunter-gatherers and fishers, living in settlements called kotan, along the coasts and rivers. Their cosmology was animistic, believing that spirits, or kamui, reside in all things: animals, plants, fire, water, and even tools. The most important of these was the bear, which they saw as a god visiting the human world in disguise. Their most significant ritual, the Iomante, involved the ceremonial sacrifice of a bear cub that had been raised in the village, a complex rite designed to send the kamui back to the divine world with gifts. Ainu culture is visually striking. The men traditionally wore full, thick beards, and the women were known for the distinctive tattoos around their mouths and on their arms, a practice that was banned by the Japanese government in the 19th century. Their textiles are renowned for their bold, geometric patterns unique to their culture, woven into robes made from elm bark or cotton. Their oral history is preserved in epic poems called yuka, which were traditionally recited over many hours or even days, recounting the deeds of gods and cultural heroes. Beginning in the Meiji Restoration in the late 19th century, the Ainu faced a systematic policy of forced assimilation. Their language was suppressed, their traditional lands were taken, and they were forced to adopt Japanese names and customs. The government promoted the myth of Japan as a mono-ethnic nation, effectively rendering the Ainu invisible. For generations, many Ainu hid their heritage to avoid discrimination, and their culture was pushed to the brink of extinction. Theirs is a story of profound loss and cultural struggle, but the Ainu people refused to vanish. In recent decades, a powerful cultural revival has taken hold. A new generation is working tirelessly to reclaim their language, revive their ceremonies, and educate the world about their history. In 2019, after decades of activism, the Japanese government finally and officially recognized the Ainu as an indigenous people of Japan. Their story is not just an ancient one, it is a living, breathing testament to the strength of cultural identity and the enduring power of a people to reclaim their voice from the silence of history. We have journeyed across the planet and through the depths of time, visiting just a handful of the quiet corners of human history. The Etruscans, the Sogdians, the Olmecs. These names may not be as familiar as Rome or Greece, but their contributions are woven into the very fabric of our world. They are like the unseen dark matter of the cosmos. We can't always see it directly, but we know it's there by the gravitational pull it exerts on everything around it. These cultures exerted a gravitational pull on the trajectory of human history, shaping the orbits of the great empires that followed. Each of these peoples represents a unique solution to the universal challenges of existence, a different verse in the epic poem of our species. They show us that there is no single linear path to civilization, but a rich branching tree of possibilities. Some branches grow large and cast long shadows, while others are smaller, yet produce the vital fruit that nourishes the rest of the tree. The story of humanity is not a monologue shouted by a few dominant voices. It is a conversation, a chorus of countless cultures, each singing its own song. When we look up at the night sky, we see the brilliant stars. But the true majesty of the cosmos lies in the totality. The stars, the dust, the invisible forces, the immense connecting darkness. The same is true of our own history. To truly understand who we are, we must look beyond the brightest points of light. We must appreciate the entire cosmic tapestry of human experience in all its complexity and diversity, because in the end, we are all stardust, and we are all the inheritors of a legacy far grander and more intricate than we could ever imagine.